Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This week's show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Invincible, Season 3, Episode 7. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, just as Mark is beating himself up after the whole Powerplex situation last episode, it's boom, boom, boom. Mark can never catch an emotional break because he's beating himself up because he's like, because Eve is saying like, whoa, Powerplex is getting the help he needs. It's like, whoa, what help is he getting? The help after my dad helped murder his sister and niece? Or the fact is, my fight with my dad led to his sister and niece dying, or my fight with him leading to his wife and son dying. So what help is he getting? And it's just, for him, it's a lie. It's, because it's like, he's like, I know it's not my fault, but at the same time, it doesn't not make that feeling go away. Like, you can't help but feel responsible for making him to what he is. And it just, once again, puts the whole Chicago thing in perspective, especially because he said he felt like because he was so caught up in who he couldn't save, he buried that. And now it's like, it made me not good at saving those I could save. And now it's just, his mind is a jumbled mess, but doesn't have time to fully process all that because whammo, all the other Invincibles show up because we find out what happened when Mark thought he killed Angstrom Levy. Oh, lo and behold, Angstrom's still alive. He ended up he had a contingency plan. And we also finally got to see the aftermath. His head was a mush. It's just like, it looked like his face got turned to pudding. Oh, God. I wasn't expecting, because they didn't show it last season, so I'm curious if that's how it works in the comics, too. Did they like, oh, we didn't show you then, oh, but we'll show you now. I mean, because I think I've seen the panels from that, and I think they'd handle it the same way in the comic, at least like how season 2 ended. Us just seeing that. So, that, I don't know, man. Either way, that was crazy. But yeah, still, even with his head mushed like that, he's still holding on enough to have his contingency plan go into place. He gets grabbed up and gets put back together in the time frame since then. And obviously, it's been months since season 2's finale. So he's been orchestrating all this, planning his revenge, gathering up all these different marks across the multiverse. Well, surprisingly, he didn't have as many as I thought he would. I wonder if these the only ones who took his deal, because they say like, oh, when it's all like, they're saying like at most Donald's like there's like 18 Invincibles around the world. So I was like, interesting. You would have thought it'd be a lot more. So I'm wondering, are these the only ones that Angstrom could convince? Because maybe none of the other marks are willing to take his deal. These marks, we find out what they're getting out of it, at least some of them are, is they want other dimensions to control. It's like, it's one thing when you're conquering one dimension. It's like, no, give me another dimension to control. And we kind of, learn bits and pieces about some of these other marks. Like, one mark wanted to come to this universe because he was promised he could take Debbie from this universe because he misses his mom. So either he was responsible for killing his mom, his dad did, or whatever the case may be. It could also just be that market. I mean, once again, the time dilation between dimensions. Who's to say dimensions move on the same time axis? So he could be a much older Mark whose mom just died of natural causes. Maybe she aged, or maybe she got sick, or it could just be like she died. There's another one that's like, I miss William. It's like, and that could be interpreted in multiple ways. Either that Mark and William got together, or it's just like, no, like William's my best friend and I miss him. So I guess that other Mark was maybe here for William. So it's like interesting. Most of them were here for like the whole like, let's conquer this like dimension. So, but it's interesting, Still doesn't erase the fact that they're all murdering pieces of shits, but still. Even had that one that's more, they titled him Omni Invincible, which is interesting considering like Oliver wants to be Omni Kid. So it's interesting, but also it makes sense because he's the one, this Marcus, the one that's dressed like Omni-Man. I think, was it him or a different one that said they killed their dad, which are like interesting. I wonder, well, it makes sense because the Viltrumites are all about like, they're all about, the strongest and culling their species. So it's interesting considering, like Marcus considered like, even though he's mainly Viltrumite, he's still part human. So for that, so that's just interesting to know, like, you would think of pure blood, but maybe like Nolan had a soft spot and didn't like give it his all when he was, I mean, this Nolan in this dimension stopped and, trying to kill Mark, because he let the time he spent on Earth, he started having a heart, so I don't know, it just kind of gets your mind wondering, and I mean, we'll probably never get answers to it, understandably, because that's not like the important thing, but it's just kind of interesting. The plan, it seems like Engstrom's plan was what I thought it was. It's basically to destroy Mark's reputation. And I thought it was interesting because I thought you would have sent one out at a time doing something. It's like, no, he had all of them around the world. Makes sense. You want to strike as much fear and terror into this planet as possible because even as he says it later on, even if these people recognize it's not you, because even the news was like, yo, these are people who look like Invincible, because the entire world came together being like, whoa, there's multiple Invincible attacks happening at the same time. He's strong and powerful, but how can he be literally attacking this place at the same time he's attacking this place? So the world knows it's not the same Invincible. These are just people who look like Invincible. They don't know this is Invincible just from different universes. But at the end of the day, it's still the thing of every time Mark's face will come up as Invincible, anytime his name is uttered, they will always remember these days. Because this was an onslaught. For 3 straight days, these Invincibles went around. Because, I mean, we know, because Invincible is the strongest hero on this planet. And we're talking about unfiltered ones. And some of them are weaker than Mark. Others are probably on par with Mark or stronger. But the fact is, you got multiple Invincibles around, crashing out, like killing everybody. Hell, the Cecil and them got hit, and luckily their dead robots ended up beating the crap out and killing Mark. Then there's also Donald. Literally half his skeleton, his mechanical skeleton is revealed. I even love that he's like, yo, let me get out there, sir. I can be more good. But Cecil's like, you're just going to get yourself killed. He's like, that's what I do, sir. I'm like, you go, Donald. I was like, I mean, we know Donald's been brought back before. So, I mean, he didn't die this time. So we're still on life 39. I guess technically it will be life 40. But yeah, like this life didn't end. He's just like, oh, all he has is his torso left. So also we got introduced to that Brit guy. I was like, is that Mike from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul? And yes, it is. Jonathan Banks. Just interesting because I obviously heard his voice recently. He played Noonan in Kite Man Hell, yeah. So it's like so obviously it got his voice fresh in my mind. So I was like, Mike. But either way. But yeah, like heroes were scattered around the world. There is just so much death and destruction. It's multiple, like that's the thing too, like the timing of it. I'm wondering was the timing exactly like this in a comic or not, because I do know they have slightly changed certain things. They've also moved stuff around. But the fact is, going from the Powerplex conversation about the whole Chicago incident to now having multiple Chicagos happen throughout the world, because he said like the total count was like 100,000 at minimum, and then just like in the coming days or weeks, that number experts are suggesting it's going to triple. You're like multiple Chicagos happen, and that was like 2,000 plus people, and it's just like what was it, like New York, Tokyo, I think they even say like it's just all over the world got wrecked, and it's just horrendous, and so many heroes died. Dude, the Rex and Ray stuff broke my heart, dude. Because the moment it's like, right, they're trying to say their goodbyes and stuff. Because it's like, right, he's like, I'm not going to, convince you to stay. But it's like, right, especially because he was like, you need to stay behind when stuff started popping off. And he's just like, right, I'll be right back. He's like, you can't retire on your after your first day of retirement. You can't just like undo that. Which is also interesting. It's the first time we've ever seen them suit up, which is interesting. Like Rex kind of burns off his clothes to summon his suit underneath. And Ray's also wearing hers, so she shrinks out of her clothes and then expands and she's in her suit. But it's like Rex telling her to stay behind saved her life. Because it's like, because I was scared. I was scared at any moment. Like, Mark knows these people. He knows where they live. And things probably played out a little differently in this dimension because life went beyond when Mark ended up helping conquer this planet. But the fact of the matter is, no one's necessarily safe, because I'm scared at any moment in time he could have come over and killed Ray, but Rex told Ray to stay back. I was like, oh God, don't tell me Rex. And then I thought, well, maybe then Ray would follow Rex, and then she'd get killed. I didn't know how this was gonna play out. But Rex being the badass that he is, put it all on the line. You know, he told the others, "Yo, I got a plan." He made sure that Bulletproof got Rudy and Amanda, Monster Girl, out of there. He's like, "Huh." At this point in time, they still can't tell when I'm lying. And so he's throwing everything in the kitchen sink, literally, at the mark he's fighting. Obviously, it's the most desperate he's ever been in a fight. I mean, even to the Lizard League situation, but like even exploding that whole part of the floor just to blow up Mark, but it didn't do anything. And then Mark's like, "Oh, I'm going to make you suffer." And then Rex is like, "Yeah, I am stupid," but he's like, "I still have one piece, something I can't blow up." And he's like, "What is that?" He's like, "My skeleton, you like dickhead," or something like that. And then blows himself up. You're like, fuck, dude. But yo, you gotta give it to Rex, yo. And it's so sad, like the personal growth and stuff, just to have this heroic moment, so well deserved. But it still sucks, dude. You're almost like, well, I mean, especially the conversation him and Ray had last episode. It was only a matter of time, and it's just damn, you know, just before him and Ray, anything could happen between them. You know, and once again, this also plays into the timeline being so different. It's so interesting too, because kind of playing into that, what I was bringing up, like in that timeline where they went to the future and ended up sending Mark back to his dimension, right? So they come from a different dimension where he did, or once again, I think it is like the same dimension, and things are different because it was Rex inside of the armor. It wasn't Rudy. So either that still could happen, and that's going to be like a cloned Rex, because I mean there is cloning technology, so they could bring him back in that capacity. I mean, they brought back Donald, so it's not out of the realm of possibility, and Ray might push for it, like, yo, bring Rex back. But I don't know if, like, maybe it's a thing of there's enough of Donald to be brought back, maybe there's not enough of Rex considering he exploded everything in that moment. So who knows? But the thing I was going on that diatribe about too was Angstrom must have never come back in that, like, in whatever timeline they're from. Angstrom was dead. This might be one of the few times that, like, in a alternate timeline or whatever, where Angstrom did die, or maybe he did still come back and just think. Because once again, Mark, all they said was Mark wasn't the same, and you're not supposed to know about the future. So Angstrom coming back probably did happen, but you're also dealing with a Mark that's very different from the Mark in this universe, who came back, who was beaten up and rattled about the whole killing Angstrom thing, but didn't go completely crazy like their Mark did by the time they got to him. So it's just a lot to think about. So I was wondering, like, could it be like a different Angstrom, like, in their timeline didn't survive, that this just happened to be the one timeline he did. I don't know, maybe Mark ended up making sure the job was done. Maybe it's also the thing of, because Mark was here longer, maybe he would have found out about Angstrom and then, like, made sure Angstrom died this time. So that could be something too. Like, because he stayed here longer, he might have been around when Angstrom ended up getting pulled into, like, that workshop or whatever, for them to, like, piece him back together. So, but that's the interesting thing too. Like, it's so funny because people's issue a lot is, like, they hate seeing Mark constantly lose all the time and stuff, which is so interesting. But it's like, it's kind of a good thing to see Mark lose, considering, like, not all of these, once again, not all of them are stronger than Mark. Mark is handling and piecing up some of these versions of himself because he is stronger. But he's not, you know, especially when he has to go up against multiple versions of himself. But there are versions of him that are stronger. Like the one at the prison where you got Powerplex helping out. You know, sadly, some of the heroes turn to get smart because they don't know friend or foe. They don't know, like, yo, are you a Mark that's causing destruction or what? But it's like, nah, because he beat up the one at the prison, and then Powerplex helped, you know? So, which obviously for him, it's like, ooh, I get to kill some Marks. It's so interesting because I think someone had suggested that last episode. I was watching something, and someone's like, oh, he's got all these Marks out here now, like, release Powerplex, let him do his thing, you know? So, you know, it does help out in his own regard. So, you have Debbie having to let Oliver go because she's like, she knows, like, the world needs help right now, and Oliver can do something. But obviously, she's a mom that's like, all right, go, but, like, just be safe. And, you know, she's worried about her boys. And, you know, she stays with Paul, and she's just like, I should go. We are being evacuated, but I don't want to go anywhere because I need to stay by the news. I need to know what's happening to my boys, you know? And, you know, loves her children, and Paul's right by her side. So at least she wasn't alone throughout all this. and it's a good thing that she was at Paul's house, must mean that, once again, these are Invincibles that took over the world sooner, probably around the time of season 1, maybe, age-wise and stuff. So Debbie and Paul never dated. So they don't know about Paul. They don't know. And luckily, even Cecil says it later on, some of the suburb areas weren't as messed up. But I think it's because Debbie in this universe is dating Paul, ended up saving her life. I mean, one of those marks was going to grab her and take her back to his dimension, but still. So I also thought it was interesting because I was about to say about the angstrom of it all, because he's like, why are they so willing? But I guess they're getting something out of it. But I'm like, why are you so willing to work with him? It's so ironic too, considering like the Mauler twins kind of learned that lesson at the end of season 1. I mean, at the first episode of season 2, like, we're never going to work for someone else again, you know? Even though Mark was kind of doing his thing, kind of in the name of the Viltrumite Empire, but he's still kind of doing it on his own. But now you're like being on an angstrom, and so they all turn on angstrom because they're like, and he even calculated. He was like, wow, I figured you would, but I was kind of hoping, I wasn't expecting you to turn on me so soon. And it's like, well, these are all marks that are young and like impatient, and especially these psychopathic versions of marks. Yeah, they're gonna, and he ends up locking them on the same planet where they all killed Angstrom. Well, this mark killed Angstrom, or other marks have killed Angstrom, on this planet, on that particular planet or dimension. So they're trapped there. So only reason why Mark ever, well, because eventually Mark does find his way off that, considering the future dim was like, yeah, like, or maybe they're saying by the time it took us to get to you, you were kind of crazy. So maybe there is no way out of that dimension. There's kind of nothing in that dimension to where, so all they have is each other. So eventually probably starve, but you probably have to check the universe to see if there's anything left in that universe. Like, there's a lot, you know? So, and at least they're not alone, but those Invincibles could potentially always pop up again, along with other ones. So we're not done with that storyline. I guess Angstrom's biggest folly is his trying to like do his supervillain thing of, oh, I want to make Invincible suffer, so bring him to me, because they specifically go to his house. So I guess you almost want to kind of repeat last season. But either way, once again, luckily Debbie and Oliver weren't there. Also, Oliver isn't the baby you can toss around anymore. The boy's powerful now, and you know, he's already got some bodies on his hands. So, but because initially Mark doesn't want to get involved. Like, it's during the day 2 of the Invincible like attack on the planet, and Mark doesn't want to leave Eve's side despite everything, because he's just kind of torn on like, well, if I leave Eve, she's going to be defenseless, because these other marks know I care about her. I mean, there's even marks that hate her because she was kind of like the weakness of their heart, I think. And so it's like she's going to be easy target. I'm worried about Mom, but it's like, and then Oliver, but I'm like, you know, it's like, what do you do? Because I think for him, he feels like if he steps out, he's just, for one, he feels like he's going to make things worse because like, if I leave one person, I'm going to abandon the other two. So I have to pick, I have to choose. So when it's all said and done, though, like, you know, when Angstrom's just by himself, Cecil takes him to him, and Mark and him duke it out. I love it, but Mark is like, yo, you're not going to send me to another dimension again. He's like, don't worry, I'll bring you back after I've destroyed your life. But Mark is like, yo, he's prepared after last season. It's like, I'm dodging every portal you're trying to get me to fall into. I must stop myself. He's faster, he's stronger. And that's the thing, like, Angstrom's underestimating him, because yes, I've got these little orbs that are like going to like even a playing field, because he's got a shit ton of them, and he's pushing Mark back. But it's a very tit for tat battle because of that. But Mark is still like outpacing him to some extent. But like when that last wave comes and Mark's almost near pushed into a portal, just punching his way through and ripping through these orbs to the point Angstrom starts running out of him. And by the time it's Mark got him, and it's like you're done. And then Oliver's there like, kill him, kill him, kill him. But Mark's torn, because it's like, right, I thought I killed you before and I didn't, so that's good. But also, I should have killed you before, because all of this is on me. If I had just killed you, he even says it later on, I racked myself so much around guilt about how I handled this, how I killed someone, and I didn't. But because I didn't finish you, you ended up coming back, and so many people are dead. So this is on me. Yes, I can be indirect with the other things, like maybe the thing with Powerplex last episode, all that stuff. His sister, his niece, his wife, his son. Yes, I could say, I know that's not my fault. This is more directly because I didn't put him in the ground. Once again, it's the superhero conundrum of killing your villains. Do you kill them or not? There's a good chunk of people be like, no, you kill your villains, you put them down, because any future death is on your hands, and that's where Mark is. And here, like, he wants to set a good example for Oliver of, like, we don't kill people, but, and once again, in this instance, Mark hasn't technically killed anyone. Still has it. And so when Mark, he's like, all right, you leave me with no choice. I was curious to see what Mark was going to do. I was like, is he going to find another way to deal with Engstrom, or is he going to, like, actually kill him? But Engstrom ends up getting away. He ends up attacking Oliver, and Mark got distracted, and he ends up teleporting away, but Mark grabs one of his arms. So the bastard got away again. But the people who helped him, the technicians, they were getting something out of it. They're like, we will help you, but we recognize you aren't someone that keeps your promises. We saw what you did to the other Invincibles, so you are going to serve us. Because they smartly put contingencies inside of his repairs in case he ever stepped out of line, that they control him. So it's like, you work for us now. And they seem like a very logical, like, we don't know what these technicians' deal is, who they really are. So what that storyline ends up being, especially when they have a multiverse crossing bastard like Engstrom at their disposal, what that means, I don't know. Because they could easily be people like, you could easily see them as being like indifferent scientists in regards of, oh, we're going to progress our work. We don't care whether it's used for good or bad. It doesn't matter as long as we're progressing it. Maybe they have good intentions, maybe they have bad intentions, but I feel like just the practicality that Engstrom talks about them with kind of feels more like they just go about things their way, and it doesn't matter whatever else. It's just like, like I said, it's a very neutral perspective they have on things. And they're even saying, like, yeah, you go out of line again, we could always just basically have endless fascinations from your body. So Engstrom, it's like, yeah, you're so quick to turn on all those other Invincibles, and you thought you were so in control, but now, nope, you're a puppet to someone else. So it's going to be interesting to see where that storyline goes and how that comes back into Mark's life in some shape or form. But yeah, 3 days of destruction. Mark gets back out there and decides to try and help, but it is the thing of, he's out there helping with Oliver, but the problem is Powerplex is helping too, and he's blaming Mark. He's like, this is all your fault, which once again, like, it's just 2 episodes of continuous emotional trauma and baggage. And it's like, I mean, especially because the whole because I also forget the whole immortal thing from the future, that was just episode 4. So it's like, yeah, that's a lot of emotional baggage and stuff to kind of ultimately end up carrying, obviously. So, but Powerplex tries to hurt Mark, but they just like absorb all his powers, and he gets taken away, and he's shouting in front of all these other heroes and people. He's like, why are you just letting him do this? This is all his fault. And Mark is just holding his head down like in shame, because he's like, it is. And the other people, once again, what Engstrom wanted happened. People are looking at him this way, like, oh, look at you, look what you did. So that is kind of a heavy thing for Mark to have to contend with. Then there's that conversation he had with Eve's parents, which I thought was interesting, because Eve kept canceling because she didn't want Mark to have to meet her parents. She's like, my parents are terrible. Even though we're in a better place, I still recognize my parents are terrible. And I think for her, it's like, I don't want the good in my life to meet the bad in my life, And, we're barely scratching in the direction of good with my parents, so I don't want to ruin anything. I know how they can be. But Ark's like, messed up, terrible parent thing on my side, right? It's like, yeah, but at least, well, it's so interesting because both their dads suck. Her mom sucks, but she's like slightly better than her dad, but her mom sucks as well. It's hard to compare and contrast when like you have Eve's mom versus Debbie. Debbie's the MVP, bro. You can't like she's like one of the best moms, so you can't, it's hard to compare. And like Eve knows, like my mom doesn't compare to your mom. But either way, it's interesting, like because they don't know about Mark because they've never been introduced to him, but they know enough because I think Eve has talked a little bit about him. Probably not like that they're dating, but when Mark was there with Eve, because she's still unconscious, her wounds aren't as bad, but yeah, she got like her leg was broken and she got slammed, so she's pretty messed up, but not as bad. It's interesting seeing Mark kind of obviously being on the other side of that in the aftermath of all this, because it's like, right, his mom was there for him when he was going through what he went through after fighting Nolan in season 1. And so it's just kind of interesting parallel. And as he's walking away, Eve's mom stops him and is like, oh, like, because he's like, whatever I can do to help. And she's like, oh, thank you so much. And she talks about, she's like, it's a little funny. And she's like, funny isn't the right word. Ironic. And she's like, no, ironic isn't a word. And she brings up Valerie, which is that lines of dialogue is extra sad because she references that Valerie and Eve used to be really good friends when they were kids, but then they drifted apart. That being Val's the girl she was friends with during the Academy special, but around the time she was 12, she showed off her powers and freaked her friend out, and they lost touch. But she brings up her friend because she's like, Valerie was just a regular person. She didn't she wasn't fighting evil. She wasn't out there helping people, and she still died. The point of that being that despite everything, we were concerned, our biggest concern and why we were kind of assholes towards Eve is because we know what the superhero world is capable of. And even though we didn't go about it the best way, didn't express it the best way, we didn't want our daughter out there getting hurt because we knew this was an eventuality. That comes with the territory. That's what every parent fears. We see that with Debbie, obviously with the Oliver. I mean, she had that concern with Mark, and then like even more so with Oliver, especially being so young and wanting to be out there. But it's like, and that's Valerie's an example of, despite you not being a superhero, you weren't even helping people, you were just living your life, and now you're dead. That is like Eve being that's the irony, that even Eve being a superhero, like, of course it makes sense her getting hurt, but like you could be a regular person in this world living your life and still be collateral damage. So it's like, Eve, even if she was a normal person, there's no guarantee she would, we wouldn't be in this exact same situation or worse. At least her being powered made it so that she's had a higher chance of survival. But I also think the reason why I say it's even sadder is, I mean, it makes sense because we never saw anything happen, but the fact is Val and Eve never made up. Like we saw in the Eve special that they never rekindled, and she's never gotten brought up again. So it's like, it's sad for whatever reason those two never like ever made up, and that's got to be a sad thing of like, right, like this was like your best friend, like kind of your only friend growing up, and to lose them, and then like luckily you found other people in your life, but like now like it's kind of sad because you're like, oh, there's no rekindling that. I mean, sometimes there's people you have you're friends with when you were younger that you're never friends with you're older in your later parts of your life, but it's still kind of sad to know like they never had an opportunity to rekindle their friendship, but maybe it wasn't meant to be, but yeah. Maybe Eve never reached out. Maybe she never did. I mean, once again, it was probably years of like you never saying anything. So we just went our separate ways, You didn't accept me for who I was, and other people have. So I don't know. That's just kind of interesting. Despite everything between Cecil and Mark, Cecil is still trying to be there for Mark. And he's like, right, maybe if you had killed Engstrom, we wouldn't be here. But, you shouldn't beat yourself up for being a good person. That's not a terrible thing, Mark. The fact is you didn't kill him, and that is a good thing. I mean, Cecil knows what Mark went through thinking that. And I guess it's like, now it's also like the fact is you didn't immediately jump to murdering him too. That's why you're one of the best Marks in the multiverse. So it is the thing of, you kind of have to take the good with the bad, but it's like, don't beat yourself up about it because this wasn't you. This is Engstrom. And it's like, telling him that his mom was okay because she was at Paul's. And it's interesting. Like, once again, even Cecil says it. We might be on opposite, like we might not agree right now. We might be having our issues, but we're both on the same side. We just want to save lives. To the point, Cecil wants Mark to lead the Guardians, but Mark's like, I'm not ready for that. Like, you and I like are not going to like we don't see eye to eye. And he's like, that's actually the perfect reason for you to take over, Mark. You're the one person that's like stood up to me, and that says something. And but for Mark, it's like that. I'm still not ready for it. You need help, I'll come, but like no. But Cecil's like, I know you're going through a lot, and he's like, if you need to talk to someone, but he's like, if I was going to talk to someone, it's definitely not going to be you right now. But he does still appreciate Cecil. He does say thank you, though. You know, despite everything, it's like you are trying to help. Like we might have our fundamental moral like quandaries about like you know each other's approach and stuff, but still like we are both on the same side, and it's just like Mark isn't coming back to work for Cecil anytime soon. Once again, maybe never, but I figured by the end of the season he would, but that might not be the case. So yeah, like Mark's got a lot to think about in the aftermath of all of this, you know, just the continued death and destruction. He also found out that Rex is dead, which is so sad because like Rex had become like one of his best buds, you know. Luckily William's okay. Luckily he had Rick with him to make sure that he was okay, so that's good. Um, we have Immortal retiring. I should also really quickly bring up Immortal. Him fighting one of the marks. It led to that was it Cartor situation. And I love that he's like, finally a body for me. But it's like, well, Mark's Viltrumite, so it's probably not the easy. I mean, well, we know the Martians can't really like possess their body, so it kind of makes sense. So he couldn't, and Immortal and that Mark kept fighting. And then the ladies from that were stuck in the tomb last season, it's like, oh, we brought that back. They were trapped in there for months, and now it's like they're finally free. So once again, I love we just keep in the very smallest way keep cutting back to that storyline at least once or twice a season. So it's gonna be interesting to see where that ultimately ends up going and how that plays out. They must be significant characters later on in the story because we are like slowly trickling out that storyline. So we'll see. Because the Guardians themselves, obviously, as those who were remained, got their shit pushed in by one Invincible. Yo, new Darkwing almost caught it like old Darkwing. Like the moment he got the leg grab, I was like, oh shit, here we go. But I guess because he's not as strong as Nolan, he couldn't immediately splatter his brains on the ground like Nolan did the OG Darkwing. But this Darkwing took him. Funny enough, him trapping another Mark in a different dimension, and it's like he probably is dead since he never came back. But I mean, he made the ultimate sacrifice. I wasn't expecting that Darkwing storyline to go down that route, but it did. So it's gonna be interesting to see what if it. Not like I said, he didn't come back, so he might be gone. So, but he took a Mark out with him, just like Rex did. So I'm pretty sure the one that Rex was fighting is dead too. So, but even if he wasn't, he's at least in another dimension where the other ones are. Like I said, boy oh boy, was this a heavy ass episode all across the board. You're just like, once again, you're so nervous because you don't know who's going to make it because so many people, so many heroes died. And now Mark's got all this weighing on his conscience and he's still helping out. But even, once again, Mark can't catch a break. Very much like, just like the emotional toll of like everything you went through. The Viltrumites always have the worst timing because he had to reveal going from episode 7 to 8, seeing his dad murder Immortal, which really quickly, Immortal and Kate are calling it quits because they're just going to start a family. So, yeah. I'm sure running into her brother again before his prison break, like last episode, no, in episode 5, I'm sure a lot of that played a part in probably her thinking. And just after all this death and destruction, worried about Immortal and everything, it's like, we need to make a change. So they're out now too, like fully this time. So I'm curious to catch up with Ray, but circling back to what I was bringing up. He watched his dad murder Immortal, and then they had their whole climactic fight in the season 1 finale. You had Anissa showing up, and then like the breakup with Amber, and then immediately right into the Angstrom stuff in the season 2 finale. And now we go from, oh man, the Powerplex stuff to the Angstrom Levy and all the other Mark stuff. And now, lo and behold, who shows up? Conquest, voiced by Jeffrey D. fucking Morgan. Hell yeah. But it's like, yeah, like, oh, he's like, you didn't do what you were supposed to, and this was kind of like your final warning. And Mark's like, you picked the worst time. After everything that's gone down, I'm looking for someone to fight right now so I can hit as hard as possible. And the episode ends with them tussling. So, because Conquest, I I am not familiar with the character. I've only heard people name drop him like Conquest. People are so excited for him to pop up. So I don't know who he is in the grand scheme of things. I don't know if he's like one of the strongest Viltrumites or whatever. As we know, there's not many of them, but or at least not many purebloods. So, but yeah, Mark is just looking to tussle, and it's just like the world just dealt with what it's dealing with, and now they've got to deal with another situation because it's going to be a repeat of the season 1 finale with Mark duking it out with his dad. Things are going to be a little different, maybe. It won't be as one-sided, but still, like, Conquest is here, and what that means, how that situation plays out. Well, also, we have to wait to see where the season finale takes us with all of this, because let's not forget, Nolan and Alan are still out there. They might make their way back to Earth to help Mark with the conquest of it all, but it's like, that's going to be a complicated situation, because it's like, them dealing with everything, they're dealing with all these multiple Invincibles. Then another Viltrumite shows up. Oh, and now Nolan, Omni-Man is back. It's going to be, I feel like that's the direction that might go, but we'll have to wait to see how it plays out next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.